Welcome to Criminologist, your source for unraveling the mysteries of the most perplexing true crime cases. Born the youngest of two children, David Glenn Lewis was born in Borger, Texas in 1953 and graduated from high school in 1972. After graduating high school, David attended Texas Tech University, where he received high marks and graduated with a political science degree. He then achieved the coveted doctorate in jurisprudence in 1979 from his alma mater's law school, Texas Tech University Law School. He gained entrance to the American Bar Association and practiced as a lawyer in Amarillo, Texas. While in law school in 1981, David married Karen, and together they had a daughter. From all outward appearances, David was a family man who never neglected his paternal and civic duties. He volunteered for various charities, was a Sunday school teacher at the church he attended weekly, a member of the Dumas Community Education Advisory Council, and was involved in the Boy Scouts of America as a district chairman. In late January of 1993, in preparation for the male-centered Super Bowl weekend that was about to occur, David's wife and daughter took a trip from their home in Amarillo to the metropolis of Dallas, 365-mile journey for a girls' weekend of shopping. They departed Amarillo on the 28th of January, leaving David at home alone. Little did they know this would be the last time they ever saw the beloved and cherished David, husband and father, alive. On the 31st of January, which was the actual of the Super Bowl, and upon returning home from their long trip, they walked into their home to find the TV still recording the football game long after the match had ended, as well as fresh food in the fridge. David's wedding ring and his watch had been set on the kitchen counter, but David was nowhere to be seen. It has been discussed in the media that the TV recording machine David used, presumably a VHS, was not one that was capable of recording on a preset function, meaning he would have to press record when wanting to start the tape recording of the game. Because the tape was still recording the subsequent television programming when his wife and child got home, the idea that his VCR was a manual one and not automatic is supported. The house was calm and quiet, with no signs of a struggle or anything missing or disturbed. Thinking David had left to watch the game from another household, or that he may have slipped out to do some errands, his wife and daughter initially thought nothing of it. However, by the morning of the 1st of February, with no sign of David, his wife became increasingly worried. She then called Amarillo Police Department to report her husband missing. That night, unbeknownst to David's wife, a body would be found some 1,600 miles away at 10:30 p.m. in Yakima County, Washington. Several people spotted an individual on Route 24 near Moxie, several miles from Yakima Airport. The person was reported to be either walking in the middle of the dark road or lying by the side of the road, but was a hazard either way, so much so that the people in the car that witnessed this turned around on the road to head back the opposite way to warn incoming motorists of the danger to both themselves and the wayward man. But when the driver came back after warning the approaching motorists, he found the man already dead. The deceased man was middle-aged and dressed in military-style clothing and was wearing work boots. The man had been struck head-on by a vehicle who, understandably, didn't see him in the position he was on the road, but in a callous act of inhumanity, fled the scene. A Chevrolet Camaro was seen speeding away around the time he was struck. Lacking any traces of the usual drugs tested for in his system and with no alcohol in his blood, police were flummoxed in regards to why he was wandering on a dark road late at night. With no ID on his person, the police have no idea what had happened. Meanwhile, back in Amarillo on the 2nd of February, the investigation into David's disappearance takes a turn when David's car is found. The red Ford Explorer was located outside the Potter County Courthouse in downtown Amarillo. Under a mat on the floor, detectives found David's house and car keys. His checkbook, credit cards, and driver's license were all located inside the car, in David's normal storage areas of the car. Back at home, detectives continued to puzzle over the fact that David's wedding ring were at home, and all of the normal items David would usually bring along with him on any outing were accounted for. But where was David? Upon further interviews with David's wife, she revealed that he had cryptically told her his life was in danger. He wouldn't, however, tell his wife any information about the threats he believed to be on his life or what the cause of the danger was. When the police looked into the days before David went missing, they found that on January 28th, David left his law firm, Buckner, Lara & Swindle, at around noon. He told his co-workers that he wasn't feeling well and was going home. Shortly after, his credit card was used to pay for gas. Even though he had stated he wasn't feeling well, he taught a government class at Amarillo College until 10 p.m. that night. The next day, on the 29th of January, one of his friends claimed to have seen David hurrying through the Southwest Airlines terminal at Amarillo International Airport, and he wasn't carrying any luggage with him at the time. On that same night, at around 10:30 p.m., a police officer claimed to have seen David's red Ford Explorer parked outside the Potter County Courts building. However, the vehicle was not there the next day. On 30th January, someone deposited $5,000 in David's joint bank account. A neighbor claimed to have seen the Ford Explorer at his house that day. The next day, on the 31st of January, a sheriff's deputy saw the Ford Explorer parked outside Potter County Courts building again, and a man resembling David was standing across the street from the courts building. The man seemed to be taking pictures of the vehicle. On 1st February, a cab driver claimed to have driven someone who resembled David from a hotel to the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. The driver said the man seemed very nervous and fumbled while paying in cash. David's family believes that his job as an attorney may have contributed to his untimely demise. They postulate that perhaps a past client that was unhappy with his work on their case, or maybe even a rival from David's professional life that he had made angry or jealous. Of course, David didn't win every case he tried as a lawyer, and perhaps a verdict that was unfavorable led to someone seeking out revenge. More specifically, David was meant to be in Dallas 1 week after his disappearance. He was set to give a deposition as witness to a conflict of interest case between David, his former law firm, and one of their wealthy ex-clients. In a conversation had with his father before his mysterious disappearance, David had said he had no plan to help cover up any wrongdoings on the part of his former firm, and told his father that his plan was to, quote, "tell the truth, whoever it hurts." While this idea of David being in danger was promising for investigators in terms of motive, those leads led to nowhere. One concrete piece of evidence detectives found that was puzzling was 2 plane tickets purchased in David's name around the time of his disappearance. The initial ticket they found was purchased on the 31st of January and had David scheduled to fly from Dallas to Amarillo. Detectives couldn't discern if this ticket was related to the same journey that David's wife and daughter had made on the exact same day, as they too went from Dallas to Amarillo. It is unclear how David's wife and daughter traveled. Whether it was by plane, train, or automobile is unclear, but his wife stated they didn't ever have plans for David to accompany them, as the main reason they were getting away was for him to enjoy the Super Bowl. The day this ticket was bought was the same day his wife and daughter returned home to an empty house. The second ticket was purchased 1 day later, on February 1st, and was a ticket from Los Angeles International Airport to Dallas. This is the same day the body of John Doe was discovered in Washington. It is unclear if any of the plane tickets had been used or attempted to be used. The true meaning or motivation of these 2 tickets is unknown. If David did intend to use the plane tickets, how? How did he plan on getting from Amarillo to Dallas, which was roughly the distance of San Francisco to LA, at almost 6 hours by car, so that he could use the plane ticket, which would take him from Dallas back to Amarillo? Detectives briefly wondered if David had some intention to meet up with his wife and daughter as some sort of surprise, but as his wife asserted, no such plan was discussed. David's disappearance was closed after 11 months with no new developments. In 2002, the police department made a statement that they believed that based on the fact that he purchased plane tickets, that his leaving was voluntary and that no foul play was suspected. They believed David voluntarily walked away from his life in Amarillo and disappeared into the night, off the grid. 2003 marked 10 years since a John Doe was discovered wandering the road on the night of the Cowboys' win against the Bills at the Super Bowl on January 31st. Nearly a decade after David's disappearance, Washington Patrol Detective Pat Ditter was reading a newspaper series called Without a Trace, which was about missing persons cases that had gone cold. Ditter, a consummate detective, learned more about the main impediments to positive identification and closure in missing persons investigations. Particularly, Ditter read about the deep flaws of the NCIC's computer system at the time. Motivated by the potentiality that the answers were already ready, just waiting to be cataloged, cross-referenced, and shared, Ditter decided to use what seems to have become best friend to real-life investigators and armchair detectives alike, Google. Starting with the pretense that the information needed to find these missing persons had have fallen through the cracks of computer databases, Ditter utilized the power of Google by inputting characteristics of to roughly dozen unidentified bodies in the hope of finding missing persons cases that match their physical descriptions. Only a week after Ditter first began to look up descriptions of unknown victims, a potential hit, the Yakima County. Washington John Doe that had been found the night of the Super Bowl under more than unusual circumstances was linked through keywords of the phonotypical descriptions to a man missing out of Dallas, Texas. All this information was found under the Doe Network, an internet-based database created in hopes of bringing closure to families worldwide. On the website, which hosted various images of those who might be a potential match based on keywords, one caught Ditter's eye in particular. The picture of David Glenn of Amarillo, Texas, was extraordinarily similar to one Ditter had of the John Doe found on the dark road the night after the Super Bowl. The only difference from the picture of David in comparison to one of the man found deceased was that the unnamed man found on the road wasn't wearing the usual eyeglasses David always wore. But, sure enough, in looking at the catalog of contents found with the deceased, they had listed a pair of eyeglasses. Sure that there was more to this case than mere coincidence, Ditter contacted investigators in Amarillo and sent them a few items found on the John Doe from Washington that could be used to positively identify him. One was the military-style work boots David was wearing. The other was a preserved tissue sample from the deceased. In October of 2004, using DNA provided by David's mother, Esther, they were able to match the two cases definitively. 11 years after his mysterious disappearance, family man and attorney David Glenn Lewis was positively identified as the deceased man found on Route 24, 1,600 miles from his home. Although the victim that had been killed in a hit-and-run would finally have a name, that seemed to be the only thing that was certain and straightforward about this case. It is unknown why David would have headed to Washington, and neither friends nor family has been able to offer any insight into a link that he may have had to the area. While the John Doe was finally given a real name, David Glenn Lewis, the realization brought about more questions than it did answers. Why was this established family man, set to have a calm weekend of football and leisure, found wandering the dark roads of a Washington highway? With no traces of alcohol and the normal talk screen coming up clean, what was an educated father doing on the side of a road, sans car, wallet, or phone? Had he made plans to meet someone in Washington? Had he been lured there by whomever he believed was trying to hurt him? And what was with the military-style clothing? David's wife and mother attested to the fact that David had no military ties, nor did he own, or have reason to own, any military clothing. His wife was sure that neither the clothes nor the shoes David was wearing were his from home. Ditter believes David's death on the road in Yakima County to have been an accident rather than suicide. But even if that is true, why did he disappear to begin with? This was a family man, a husband, a father, a church-going, community-oriented man who had so much to live for. Why did he leave his wedding ring on the counter and seemingly disappear, only to reappear 1,600 miles away, seemingly dazed and confused, only to meet his untimely death? Mystery and malice surrounds this attorney's death, and while no new leads have been uncovered, police hope that someone, somewhere, knows something. For more stories like this, make sure to subscribe to Criminologist and hit that notification bell. Join us next time as we unravel the mysteries behind the most perplexing cases in true crime history. Together, we can shine a light on the darkness of the unknown.